This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so today is Tuesday, May 12th, and as always, everything that we're going to be talking about today is for educational purposes only, and nothing is intended as any type of investment advice. So we have a pretty big list today, based off what we have going on out there, a bunch of side list stuff, but some pretty good show of hands that we have so far on our regular list. And the first thing that we're going to be looking at is NVAX. So as we can see, we have our prints here at 40, real nice show of hand. Then we have buying that came right around that 40-50 level, and then also at that 41. So the one thing that we have to take notice of is that the ask prints that we saw at 40 did not pull back whatsoever, and we continuously are just seeing this higher and higher waxing volume coming into this. So once it cannot sustain itself anymore, which is it's getting pretty close, I would expect another kind of bigger bar to come into there. I'm going to be expecting a real big drop to come and bring us back underneath that 40 where we first saw that buying start to come in. You can see at 42, nothing really that great yet, and our orders are very, very thin and spread out. So that's why we're going to get such a huge range coming off of this. On average, it only trades $1.84, but we're going to be expecting a lot more. We can see in the aftermarket must have earnings, whatever the catalyst was, which definitely looks like earnings. But coming into there, we're starting to push, but there is a lot of room back towards that downside. Now, the one thing that we want to look at is right over here where we came into the aftermarket. We can see our higher there is 38.60. So that would be where we're going to start for the pullback to come in. We're starting to see those selling riders, coming back. And once again, just that 40 level is a psychological level. It is not an easy thing for it to be able to hold. So based off the amount of buying that we have, we're way overextended, way past where we really should be. So I'm going to be looking for that trigger back towards that downside. And then overall, remember, the buying is there. So we definitely have the ability to continue back up. Especially even after this pullback, I'm going to be looking at 42.50 for it to happen. And then, 45, it has enough buying to be able to get there based off of the personality that we're seeing coming in. So overall, really, really like this one. It goes both ways, and it looks like we just got our trigger. And you can see once those riders start to come in, guys, and we're overextended, it makes for a very good trade, and we can see that happening as we're speaking. But once we pull back underneath that 40 level based off the buying that we had, I'm going to be expecting a trigger back towards that upside once again because of the buying is definitely there. Next thing, NNVC. So overall, it doesn't have great buying at 10. So if we come back, it's going to let me show it. Okay, yeah. So there's not really much there whatsoever, but if we look at the off-level prints that have been coming into it, you can see right here, just the positions that we have coming in, especially even after that 9 level, shows us that we're going to be able to come back up and test 10. We do not have anything there that really shows that it's going to be able to break it. 8:15 this morning, I was able to get shares of it, so definitely make sure that you go out there and you look for it because 10 is going to be a very hard level to break, especially with the fact that there's just not really that much buying that's up above. But overall, even though there's not that buying at 10, as long as we continue to see some buying that comes in on these off levels and it shows us that they need to make more money than that 10, it's still going to test it. It's still going to play a little bit of some games because of the fact that it's such a huge psychological level. But that's really what I'm looking for at this point, is just the buying to be able to show us that it has the ability to be able to break over that 10 level, because once again, the percentage is definitely a little bit lower because of the fact that it does not have the buying that's already above to show us it's going higher. So we're going to need to see that buying coming in to show us that it's going to be able to break it. Well, first of all, test it and then be able to actually, to break it. But overall, once again, just because the buying isn't at 10, make sure that you do have shares, because based off the range that we see coming into this morning already and based off that volume, if we don't see that buying, those jackhammer prints come in to break down that 10 level, it's going to have a big range. So certainly looking for the downside as of right this second, but once again, I'm going to still be looking for those jackhammer prints to come in to show us that it's going to be able to actually get back up towards that 10 level. MGNX. So this is another one which is just a very big range. See, the average right here, we really can't go by because, based off of the past, 4 days or so, it's shown us that it's completely crushing everything that we've seen during this consolidation. And just remember, based off of the amount of shares that people, the position sizes that we see based off this consolidation and popping back up, we came into a little bit of a stair step, and then that breakout towards that upside right here, that 33. This is really what interests me, because nothing really that great, but if you look very early this morning, 33 shows us that it has the ability to be able to get to 35 based off of what the range that we've been seeing over these past few days. But because it happened so early, it's going to take a while. That's why we're seeing such a huge pullback, and then obviously 30 doesn't really have that much buying based off what I could see from the aftermarket yesterday. But breaking down underneath there, a trigger towards that upside. This is a huge position based off difficulty of trade and just based off of the entire puzzle that we see coming into there. All right, so once we kind of find that bottom right here at that 29 level is a very, very strong support based off what we saw coming into there. So a trigger back towards that upside is definitely going to be a very high percentage. But overall, just because of the fact that it happened so early, I would not be shocked to see us come down and actually test this print line. But based off the prints that we're actually seeing, there's not enough selling coming into it yet. But a few prints go a long way within here. So another one. Great puzzle. The volume's not as great. The actual trading volume isn't as great as I'd like it to be, especially for that big of a move coming up. You can see it closed at 26.32 and then up to 33. Not as much trading as I would like to see, but a few riders are going to mean a lot. We're going to be talking about dollars versus cents. So another, really great setup that we see coming into there. And then mRNA. So we talked about this the other day, and we were talking about when we were stuck in this consolidation, it was starting to come to that tip. And when a consolidation gets that pointed, we know that something big is going to happen. And that's exactly what we saw yesterday with mRNA. And then this morning, if we can go back. So we have a few prints that are sitting there at that 68 that came back in, but we're really kind of pulling back from the amount of buying that we saw within it yesterday. So even though that we jumped up a little bit, I mean, it wasn't anything crazy. It closed at 66.90 and then jumped up to 70 with the based off the range that we've been seeing with this. That's it. I know it sounds crazy, but it's not really that much. So coming down to that 65 level, remember, we had a huge amount of buying and it looks like we're going to end up pulling back underneath there. But there's definitely is a building position going on during the pre-market, and then back over at that 68 level. We certainly have the ability for us to trigger back towards that upside. But just remember, from yesterday, you can see the volume's a little bit higher than it usually was. We're kind of in that valley. We didn't really break above it yesterday, so I wouldn't be shocked to see another really high volume day coming into this. And based off the amount of buying that we had yesterday, that high volume bringing us down back underneath that 65. Now 65, obviously psychological level, we know, we could see right here that it's a strong concrete level because we came right back down to it and then it popped right back up from there. But overall, if we start to see a little bit of selling, this is another one where a few prints are going to go a long way within it. Once the market opens, we do see the print personality where there's a lot. It can print a lot, even though the orders look a little bit thin, as we're looking at the puzzle within it. But if we get a nice burst of selling to come in, there's no reason we don't break underneath that 65 based off the amount of buying that we saw yesterday. Before we really do end up, making that move and getting that trigger back towards the upside. Now, a few things on our side list. First of all is CBAY. So one thing that I do like about this, now the 5 level did not really have much, and we're seeing a ton of selling. But if you look again, you're able to short this. All right, you don't need to look for shares. It's a shortable stock. And based off the range that we're seeing coming into this morning, a 50-cent trade is not going to be a hard thing to find. As we've been coming down to that 450 level, we can see a lot of selling has been there, and there's just not much buying that's up at that 5, once again being a huge psychological level. So when we come to those levels, remember, a psychological level just tells us that everyone's going to be looking at it. So when we come to a level like that and we don't really see much, just like we talked about in Traders Exchange last week, it tells us just as much as if there was something huge there. So the fact that we don't really have much buying up here and that we're seeing a ton of selling coming back into that 450 level, tells us that more than likely it's going to have a very hard time being able to hold and coming back up. So based off this little bit of buying, once again we have to look at what the size of the positions are going to be And based off this consolidation that we've had, this is a huge jump, $1.84 all the way up to our highs of pretty much 540. So coming back down, we're going to see a lot of selling. We have to understand that. So a lot of selling might look like a lot of selling, but it's not really as much as we would expect based off the positions that they already are going to have, and based off of this jump that we have. All right, so overall, once again, this 450, I just have not seen enough buying to really be able to hold that. We don't really have as much buying as we would like up at that 5 level. So once the market opens, going to be looking for kind of a jump right away, and then that move towards the downside, and then trigger back towards the selling that we've had. But once again, once we jump, we need to make sure that at those highs that we see a ton of selling start to come in, because 5, 6, 7 prints, it's not going to be enough for this. It's not going to really give you what the direction of where it's going to be going. We want to see something huge come in to really give us that direction. Mark, so Mark, we talked about yesterday, and it made the jump based off the buying that we have. And, it's the same type of deal. If you look at this consolidation, just imagine the size of the positions. You're talking about what, 35 cents? Let's just give or take, let's, put the average there. 35 cents. This is a long time to be building a position off 35 cents. We closed out at $1.79 and we jumped up all the way towards that 240. So it's the same type of deal. It might look like a lot of selling, but it's probably not as much as you think. So we really want to see, is that new buying coming back in? And based off the volume that we've had, I mean, it has the buying from this morning to continue to be able to push. And 240, right underneath 240, it does kind of trade in 10-cent increments. So at the same time, it has enough to be able to test that 250 level. My only worries are that it kind of gets a little bit quanty and it doesn't really make any type of smooth moves. It showed us yesterday that, it did pretty well, but, it was just trades very consolidated. So the reason it's on our side list is because you got to be careful. There's going to be more shakes than there's going to be clean triggers that come into it. So you really want to make sure that that trigger is completely obvious that comes in, and then make sure that you're watching your time and sales speed to show that the amount of the speed that's coming in to be able to sustain, because we're going to see some huge bars coming into the open. Now, if your computer does freeze, when the open comes, this is going to be one of those stocks that's probably going to end up doing it. You can see 10.6 million shares already being traded. But overall, like I said, it certainly has the buying to be able to get up there and be able to test that 250. Okay, that's on our side list. I'll get to that. INPX. So this is another one I'm going to be taking a look at. Now, it's towards the bottom of my side list, but at the same time, if you look at the prints, it's probably not the best decision to look at this first coming into the morning, but it's something that I'm going to be keeping on my list just, as things kind of slow down a little bit, to see if we do get out of this quant and consolidated type trading and really get some type of burst, to be able to bring us back up. There's definitely a lot of new buying that's coming into it. I mean, if you look at the size of the positions, $1.28. If we come back here, if it's going to let me show. Okay, $1.30. Based off the buying that we have, that certainly shows that we're able to test 140. But like I said, it's on the bottom of that side list. It's got to fit your game plan, because you're going to have to trade a lot of shares of it. I'm not expecting anything huge to be coming out of it. But overall, I like the setup that it's in. It's definitely in a little bit of a staircase right this second. So based off that consolidation, we're coming into basically a volume valley, and to be able to get that volume to be able to push up above, as long as the volume is higher, I really would like to see something over 300, and then once the market opens, we're going to see some really big volume end up coming in. And then SDC, I've been talking about this for a while. I know we were talking about it, when it was at what, 657 coming in. There was just a huge amount of buying, and then yesterday, right as we came into the close, we had a huge amount of buying that came in at that 9, and we ended up jumping up above. Now, make sure you go out there and look for shares, because they were available earlier this morning. But coming in, 10 doesn't really have anything that special based off what I'm seeing. I mean, it definitely has, don't get me wrong, it definitely has that new buying, but we're going to have to see a lot more, because based off of what I've been watching over the past few weeks, when it prints, it really does print. It's obvious, and I haven't really seen that as much as I would have liked to. So this 1050, yeah, there's 5 prints, and should it be able to pop back above? Yes, but overall, this thing, that 10 level is just going to be hard to hold based off not having as many prints as we would like to. Earnings tomorrow for them, just note. Interesting. So a jump before earnings. I thought earnings was actually yesterday, but either way, doesn't really matter, but certainly something that I'm going to be continuing to watch. Now, the amount of buying that we saw, this pop really kind of makes sense for it. So it doesn't have to really move that much more. And like I said, that 1050 is just not as much as I would have expected from there. But, earlier this morning, you could see, some decent prints here, 989, real decent position, especially underneath that 10, but just nothing that's really there. So we're going to end up pulling back underneath based off the fact that the volume started to come in after we started to break out from that 10. So something definitely to notice, but like what I see here, it really kind of shows an obvious hand within itself as it's trading. Now, the only problem and the reason it's on the side list is that once the market opens, a lot of times it's not a great trade. It's not smooth whatsoever. It doesn't really give us much. But overall, when we see those show of hand prints, it's certainly something to keep our eyes on. All right, so anything else out there that I missed? Anything else out there? So this is one of those days where we have a bigger list. We have a bunch of side list stocks. We have a bunch of regular stocks. So make sure that we're focusing on the best stock for what our game plan is going to be. Do not try to watch them all, because when especially depending on what your level is, if you try to watch them all, what ends up happening is we kind of get that just information overload where we see everything, but we don't end up really making any type of trade. So make sure that we focus on those show of hands, and we focus on the best things that we have out there. Now, mRNA we know is going to trade. MGNX, it goes both ways. That's probably one of my favorites, but I love NVAX. That's going to be at the top of my list, especially because we're sitting at that 40, and obviously we already got that trigger that came back down. But I am going to be expecting a pull underneath that 40, and the selling that I saw out of the corner of my eye is certainly confirming what our expectations are. Anything in DKNG? Let's take a look. It's a nice position right here, 26. Yeah, so we have some bids at 26.50. I mean, overall, looks like mostly buying. But nothing there that I see that's too definitive yet, but definitely worth looking at. I'll put this one on our side list and just make things even, make our list even bigger. But the way that it's trading so far, the volume, there's really, I don't see anything within it that really jumps out and says this is what's going to happen. But overall, I do like this position, this sell position that we saw coming into there, especially coming in on that downtrend. All right, guys, let's get ready for our morning. Remember, we have Traders Exchange at 12:30. Let's make sure that we send in our questions and topics. I will talk to everyone in the chat, and happy trading.